I wasn't supposed to be there that early. The charity gala was scheduled to start at 7, but somehow, in my head, I had it locked in as 6:30. Maybe it was stress. Maybe I just needed an excuse to get away from the house for a bit. Either way, I pulled into the garage beneath the Pendleton Hotel at 6:12 p.m. Sharp, tossed my jacket over my shoulder, and told myself I'd grab a drink and find a quiet corner before the social whirlwind began. I wasn't there to schmooze. Lauren was the one with the people *LLS. She knew everyone, floated through rooms like she was made of silk and champagne. I, on the other hand, usually hovered near the exit, nodding politely and counting down until we could go home. But that night, things took a turn before I even got to the bar. The rooftop venue had this strange layout. Main elevator on one side of the building, service corridor tucked off to the left. I'd taken a call from my brother as I got out of the elevator and instinctively drifted away from the noise of the setup crew. I walked down the corridor, thinking I'd step out onto a secondary balcony or find a quiet nook to finish the call. And that's when I saw her, Lauren, my wife, standing under a red exit sign in a dimly lit service hallway. Her heels were slightly askew, like she just slipped them back on. She was laughing at something Tyler said. Tyler, her colleague from work, the one she always described as harmless. But it wasn't laughter I'd ever heard from her before. Not that kind. It was low and mate, quiet. The kind of laugh someone gives when their guard is down. Her lipstick was smudged, noticeably so. I'd bought her that shade, a deep wine red, just a few weeks earlier. Now it bled slightly at the corners of her mouth. Tyler's suit jacket hung over her shoulders like it had been gently placed there, and his shirt, light blue, buttoned down, crisp this morning when I saw it on his Instagram, was now half-buttoned and untucked on one side. His tie was nowhere in sight. They didn't notice me at first. I stood still, frozen. My brother was still talking in my AirPod, but his voice had turned into background noise. When they finally saw me, Lauren straightened like she'd been caught shoplifting. Tyler took a small step back, instinctively maybe, like he suddenly remembered he had somewhere else to be. The air changed. That corridor, plain and colorless just seconds before, suddenly felt claustrophobic, like it wasn't meant to contain this moment, this truth pressing in on all of us. "Oh, Ben," Lauren said, blinking. "You're early." I nodded, too numb to answer. There were a dozen things I could have said, 100 questions I could have asked. But I just looked at her, then at him, then back again. Tyler gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes and muttered something about checking the AV table before walking past me without another word. Lauren lingered. She adjusted her hair in the reflection of a glass panel beside the fire extinguisher, then turned her back to me and pulled out her phone. I watched her reapply her lipstick with practiced ease, then blot the excess with a tissue from her clutch. Her composure snapped back into place like a mask slipping over a face. She didn't say anything else, just smoothed her dress, an emerald green wraparound I hadn't seen before, and walked down the hall like she hadn't just been caught in something she couldn't explain. When I followed her back into the main room, it was already buzzing with early arrivals. Waiters with trays of champagne, staff adjusting florals, and soft music drifting in from speakers near the bar. Lauren stepped into the center of it all like nothing had happened. Graceful, poised, radiant. She greeted people with that same electric charm, introduced herself to donors, even winked at the event photographer like she hadn't been in a shadowed hallway with another man minutes earlier. I stood by the entrance, watching her laugh and sip from a flute of champagne she hadn't paid for. She tossed her hair over her shoulder and leaned in close to speak to the mayor's assistant. Like she was born to be there, like everything was fine. But it wasn't. That image, her with Tyler in the service hallway, burned into me like a slow brand. It wasn't just the lipstick or the way he looked at her. It was the air between them, that closeness, that knowing. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't ask questions in the car ride home or bring it up while we brushed our teeth side by side like we had for the past 7 years. I think I wanted to believe there was another explanation. That maybe she'd spilled something on her dress and borrowed Tyler's jacket. That maybe he'd gotten dressed in a rush because of a wardrobe malfunction. Maybe she'd just been laughing because she was nervous. Maybe, maybe. But the truth had already started to bloom in the corners of my mind. And once you see the crack, really see it, you start noticing all the others. Like how she'd insisted on taking separate cars to the gala, saying she had committee prep and didn't want to be rushed. Or how she'd mentioned just last week how hard Tyler had been working, how underappreciated he was. I remembered her defending him when I'd made a joke about their long hours together. He's not like that, Ben. He's just passionate about the project. Passionate. Yeah. That was one word for it. Still, I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I lay in bed next to her while she slept, deeply, like someone without a single care in the world, and stared at the ceiling, running every detail through my mind like a prosecutor building a case. The jacket, the lipstick, the shirt, the laughter, the way she'd adjusted her hair and her expression like nothing had happened. But something had. I didn't know what it was exactly. Not yet. But it was enough to shift something in me. And from that moment on, I started watching her differently. Not with paranoia. With precision. It's funny how you can live in a house for years and not notice the rot in the walls until the first crack appears. After the gala, I couldn't stop replaying what I'd seen. Every time Lauren leaned in to kiss me goodbye or wrapped her arms around me in the kitchen, that image came back. Her with Tyler in that hallway, the smudged lipstick, the undone shirt, the way she reset her expression like a stage actor between scenes. But instead of confronting her, I did something worse. I started remembering. Not the sweet memories. Not the anniversaries or Sunday mornings tangled in blankets. No, this was different. I began collecting moments, small, quiet things from the past year that, at the time, had seemed like nothing. Now, in the shadow of that hallway, they felt like breadcrumbs leading me to something I hadn't been ready to see. The first thing that came to mind was her phone. For the past 6 months, Lauren had become surgically attached to it. Not in the obvious way, no mindless scrolling or TikTok marathons. It was more calculated than that. Her screen was always face down like a reflex. She brought it into the bathroom every time she showered. If I even glanced at it while it buzzed, her hand would snap over it like I was reaching for a wee *p*n. She claimed it was because of work. "You know how confidential some of the stuff is?" she said once, half laughing as she snatched it from the couch cushion when I sat down. "Can't risk you seeing corporate secrets." Corporate secrets, right? Then there were her calendar entries. Lauren had always been the more organized one. Her Google Calendar was her second brain. She used to color-code everything: work meetings, workouts, date nights, even dentist appointments. We joke about how she could plan the next 6 months of our lives down to the hour. But sometime around late spring, she started locking them. I noticed it by accident. I'd been using our shared iPad to check flight info for a weekend trip we were planning. Her calendar was open, but half the entries were grayed out, labeled busy. No details, no notes, just blocks of time that didn't overlap with any meetings I knew about. When I asked her, she brushed it off. "Some of my team stuff is under NDA, she said with a shrug. "They've been weird about privacy lately. Tyler's idea, actually. Tyler's idea." I didn't say anything, but I remembered that. The weekends started changing, too. She used to wear these oversized sweatshirts and complain about grocery shopping. Now she had a designated overnight bag. Always the same one. Neatly packed, never unpacked. She started referring to it as her go bag for spontaneous work trips. But work didn't move like that. At least not in her role. Lauren was a brand strategist. Her job revolved around marketing calendars and planned campaigns. There was nothing spontaneous about it. And the clothes, God, the clothes. She used to live in jeans and cardigans unless we were going out somewhere nice. But lately, boutique tags started appearing in the laundry. Silk blouses, delicate underthings I'd never seen her wear at home. Dresses that looked like they were made to be peeled off in dim hotel rooms, not worn in boardrooms. When I asked about the new wardrobe, she smiled and said, "Client-facing roles call for investment pieces." Investment. I guess that's one way to frame it. It wasn't just the stuff, though. It was the timing. The receipts in her purse from cities she never told me she'd visited. One of them was from a place called the Hollow Tree, a bistro in Santa Barbara, a dinner for two, wine, appetizers, and dessert. A handwritten note on the receipt read, "Perfect night, tea." I asked her when she'd gone to Santa Barbara, and she laughed, saying, "I've never even been." I nodded, but my stomach turned. It got to the point where I stopped trusting the idea of coincidence entirely. One night, maybe 2 weeks after the gala, I overheard something that sealed it. Lauren was at a bridal shower for one of her coworkers. I'd offered to drive her since the venue was only a few blocks away from my office. She agreed, but once we arrived, she gave me a quick kiss and said she'd Uber home since it might run late. I lingered in the hallway outside the fitting room. Not intentionally. The florist was delivering some arrangements, and the hallway was cramped. That's when I heard her voice through the curtain. She was laughing, loud, carefree. "Oh, please," she said to one of the girls. "Ben's the least suspicious person on earth. He's so sweet, so trusting. It's almost dangerous. I could vanish for a weekend and he'd probably think I joined a yoga retreat." There were giggles all around, the rustle of tissue paper and hangers sliding on racks. Then she added, with a kind of confidence that chilled me to my bones, "He'll never find out." She said it like it was a punchline, like it was fact. I stood there for a long moment after the laughter faded. I didn't confront her. I didn't rip open the curtain or make a scene. I just walked back to the car and sat in the parking lot, staring at the dash while the world kept turning around me. When she texted later, "Just heading home. Be there soon, 2 hearts." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That was the moment I stopped wondering if something was going on. Now I was asking how long. Once I reached that place in my mind, the rest came fast and hard. One night, I went into the guest room to find a charger. Her gym bag was sitting on the bed. Normally she kept it in the trunk of her car, but it had rained that day. I figured I'd unzip it and grab what I needed. But under the side pocket, wedged between a towel and a book of crossword puzzles, was a phone. A second phone. It was a cheap Android, something you'd buy off-contract, prepaid. No fingerprint lock, just a numeric passcode, and either by instinct or dumb luck, I got it open with the first code I tried, our anniversary. Inside, it was all there. Messages from Tyler. Hotel confirmations. Photos of room keys, mirrors, room service trays for 2. Travel dates and coordinates. Restaurant bills. Even a **T of a digital boarding pass. One message read, "Same suite as last time. Ask for Derek at the desk. He'll hook us up again, winking face." The metadata on the photos made it even worse. The timestamps matched her weekend strategy retreats. The GPS coordinates matched cities she'd never mentioned visiting. One thread had her texting Tyler selfies from a balcony in San Diego, while she told me she was in Oakland giving a brand presentation. I didn't need a private investigator or a hidden camera. The truth was in my hands. Ugly, unmistakable, real. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my marriage collapsed under the weight of that one small second phone. But I didn't yell, didn't confront her. I set the phone down. Then I began planning. I used to think the worst thing in the world was not knowing. That gnawing uncertainty, that quiet itch in your chest that something isn't right, but not being able to prove it. I don't think that anymore. The worst thing isn't not knowing. It's knowing, with certainty, and still pretending you don't. Finding Lauren's second phone was supposed to be the smoking G***N. And in a way it was, but instead of rage, I felt something colder, something quieter. There was no explosion, no shouting match. Just the slow, sinking weight of everything clicking into place. She had hidden it in plain sight. An old gym bag of all places. A bag I'd seen 100 times. Tossed on the floor of our bedroom. Zipped tight with damp leggings and a water bottle. And underneath it all, this other life. Her real one. The phone had no fingerprint lock, no Face ID. Just a simple 6-digit code. I don't know why I tried our wedding date first. Maybe I was feeling nostalgic in the cruelest way possible. But it worked. The screen opened up like a trapdoor, and I fell through. There were 3 message threads pinned to the top of the inbox. Tyler, a contact saved only as W Hotel Desk, and one marked Secure Drop Travel, which turned out to be a shared email folder where they dumped itineraries, scanned receipts, even PDF printouts of room service bills. I wasn't snooping anymore. I was studying. Tyler's texts were a mosaic of an asterisk-made shorthand, emojis, inside jokes, and nicknames I'd never heard. He called her LJ. She called him T. There were references to things I didn't understand: Little Rock playlist, lemon tart night, pool game 6/14. It was a scrapbook of a parallel relationship, curated with care. The photos were worse. There were mirror selfies of Lauren in hotel robes, wine glasses in the background, Tyler's reflection blurry but unmistakable. A close-up of two hands holding. Hers with that unmistakable silver thumb ring she wore. His with a recognizable watch I'd once seen him wear during a company holiday party. There was even a photo of her legs draped over his lap in what looked like a cabana, captioned, "You, me, room 517. Same time next month?" The locations matched. I cross-referenced them with the receipts and bookings saved in the travel folder. Dallas, Seattle, Palm Springs, places she never mentioned. Places I now realized were never about work, never about team strategy retreats or client education weekends. One receipt showed a couple's massage under both their names. Another had a handwritten note from room service, "Happy anniversary," from all of us at the W San Diego. Anniversary. I had no idea which date they were celebrating, but it sure as hell wasn't ours. One message stopped me cold. It was a video. Lauren, sitting on a hotel balcony, sunset behind her. Her hair was pulled up, a soft glow on her face. She was laughing, clearly tipsy, and she said into the camera, "When I'm with you, everything else disappears. I forget I even have a real life." She ended the video with a kiss toward the lens. I didn't watch it again. I turned the phone off and set it back inside the bag like it was a fragile artifact from a life I no longer belonged to. That night, I sat in the living room with the lights off, thinking about how many times she'd hugged me goodbye while wearing clothes I bought her. How many times she'd texted me updates about client dinners while sitting across the table from him. I pictured her phone lighting up with my name while she was laughing at something he said. My name on the screen. My words sent into a void. And she let me believe I was enough. I went into our bedroom and watched her sleep. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. The kind of sleep that comes when you've convinced yourself that you've gotten away with something. I used to think trust was about believing someone's words. Now I know it's about what they do when they think you're not watching. Over the next few days, I became meticulous. Not obsessive, precise. I started cataloging everything. Screensh *TS, downloads, timestamps, metadata. I used a file recovery tool to pull deleted messages off the second phone. There were even more conversations than I'd seen initially. Older ones. Plans for rendezvous that went back at least 9 months. Jokes about coworkers. Notes on how to expense personal meals as client meetings. A message from Tyler that read, "Don't forget to delete the Uber receipt this time, winking face." I didn't just read the messages. I mapped them. I laid out timelines, compared them against our bank statements, her calendar, her receipts. She'd once told me she was in Cleveland at a conference. Turns out she was in Miami, tagged in an Instagram story by accident and then untagged hours later. I saved the archive, dated it. I wasn't just looking for closure anymore. I was building a case. There's a moment when betrayal becomes undeniable, where you stop asking why and start asking how far it goes. That's where I was. Not broken, not confused, just done. Done pretending. I didn't confront her that week. Instead, I made copies of everything, backed up the data to the cloud, printed hard copies, stored them in a folder I labeled Archive. I opened a secure external drive, saved the phone contents with a timestamped log. I even set up a secret email account and mailed myself the most damning files, just in case anything got lost. I wasn't preparing for a conversation. I was preparing for an exit. One day, while Lauren was showering, I took her primary phone, the one she actually let me see, and checked her recent app history. Nothing out of the ordinary. But when I scrolled through her settings, I noticed she'd disabled message previews. All her apps were hidden behind a fingerprint. Every trace of her secret life scrubbed clean from the phone she showed me. She was careful. She was methodical. She just wasn't careful enough. And yet, I didn't feel angry in the way I expected to. That was the strangest part. No explosive outburst. No shouting match. I didn't throw a plate or punch a wall. I didn't even cry. What I felt was colder than anger. It was clarity. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. I thought about all the nights I made dinner while she claimed to be working late. All the times she called me her rock while texting another man. I thought about the vacations I planned, the anniversaries I celebrated alone, not knowing she'd started measuring her years differently. But what I felt most wasn't pain. It was control. For the first time in months, I knew the truth. And now she had no idea what I knew. That was power. That was leverage. And I wasn't going to waste it. Once I knew, really knew, everything changed. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront Lauren. What I did was detach. I started treating the marriage like a project. Not a relationship. Not a romance. A structure in collapse. One I had to evacuate with surgical precision. No drama. No noise. Just clean lines, numbered steps, and a timeline I controlled. I'd spent years making decisions as a team. Now every move I made was for me, and me alone. Step 1 was the bank. We had 3 joint accounts, 2 checking, 1 savings. I opened a new individual account at a different bank entirely. Quiet. No email notifications. No paper statements. I set my paycheck to be rerouted there. HR didn't even blink. Just a form and a signature. Done. I let 1 more direct deposit hit the joint account after that. Just enough to avoid suspicion. Then I drained my half of the savings to the dollar. Transferred it slowly in chunks over the course of 2 weeks. Not enough to raise flags. Just enough to build a soft landing if things got ugly. Next came documentation. I started small. Birth certificates, tax returns, car titles. I scanned and encrypted everything, storing digital copies on a cloud drive under an innocuous folder labeled Home Office. I backed it up on a flash drive and slipped that into a book in my office, the one with a hollowed-out middle, a gag gift from Lauren back when we used to think we were funny. Then the bigger stuff. I went through our emails, every receipt, every hotel confirmation, every flight she claimed she didn't take. I compiled a master spreadsheet. Dates, times, cities, phone records. I cross-referenced her fake work trips with Tyler's social media. Careless photos he'd posted with vague captions like K** views and grind now, wine later. He wasn't even subtle. They were both sloppy in small ways. Not obvious, but when you looked closely, patterns emerged. Duplicate Lyft receipts. Matching charges for room service in different names. Expenses listed as client meal, 2 guests, in cities she told me she never visited. I printed everything. Chronologically sorted, color-coded. Made 3 copies. 1 set in my home office. 1 in a fireproof safe I rented under my name at a credit union across town. And the 3rd, sealed in a thick manila envelope, went to my attorney. Because yes, by then I had a lawyer. Step 4, legal prep. It was strange. Sitting in the quiet office of a man I'd never met before and laying out the ugliest parts of my life like files on a table. But he didn't flinch. Didn't judge. Just asked sharp questions and took notes with a kind of calm I envied. He'd seen it all before. After I walked him through everything, Lauren's affair, the financial deception, the misuse of marital funds, he nodded slowly and said, "You're doing the right thing, Ben. Quiet planning is the best leverage you can have." We talked about asset protection, about how her use of joint funds for personal travel and luxury purchases could factor into the settlement, about how to get ahead of any attempt on her part to muddy the water with emotional claims or manufactured confusion. She didn't know I had all the evidence. She didn't know I had already shifted the financial ground beneath her feet. She still smiled at me in the mornings, still kissed me on the cheek when she left for late meetings, Still asked me what I wanted for dinner like we were the couple in a grocery store ad. But I was no longer playing that part. I watched her closely, not to catch her, to confirm, to understand how she wore the mask so easily, and how I'd believed it for so long. There was a night, maybe 10 days into my planning, where she came home unusually giddy. She tossed her heels off, padded into the kitchen in bare feet, and poured herself a glass of wine. "We're thinking about doing a company retreat," she said, spinning around to face me. "Palm Springs again. Tyler wants it to be an offsite with just the core brand team. Like super focused." I just nodded. "Sounds productive." She smiled. "You're not jealous of all my work husband time, are you?" I laughed like she wanted me to, shook my head, told her, "Nah, I trust you." She smirked and walked away, humming. And in that moment, I realized how far I'd come, that I could sit there, staring at the woman I once thought I'd grow old with, and feel absolutely nothing. Not hate, not love, just distance. Step 5. Physical separation of valuables. I started boxing up anything that mattered to me. Old family photos, heirlooms, the watch my dad left me. I took them one or two at a time to the safe deposit box. No suitcases, no boxes in plain view, just small withdrawals from the life we'd built. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, but she didn't ask. That was its own answer. I moved digital passwords to a new manager, shut down our shared Netflix account, redirected my Amazon deliveries to a new P.O. box, switched my health insurance contact info. Bit by bit, I erased myself from the infrastructure of us. It was clinical, emotionless. She wasn't entitled to my grief. She had spent months orchestrating a lie, smiling while she did it, playing me like a man too dull to see the truth even when it lived in our closet, our calendar, our credit cards. So I stopped giving her access to my feelings, and started building my exit. My attorney helped me craft the next phase, a timeline, a checklist, a series of thresholds: legal notice, financial freeze, asset protection, exposure. "Once you confront her," he said, "you lose the element of control, so make sure everything is airtight first." I took that to heart. I started logging every transaction. I found 3 more hotel stays booked with our shared card that she'd reimbursed using cashback withdrawals. She was trying to cover her trail, but poorly. In one case, she charged a $460 dinner to our card at a place in Denver she swore she'd never been. A place Tyler had posted about on Instagram that same weekend. Another lie documented. Each one went into the file. I started making calls, too, quiet ones, to our insurance provider, to my accountant, to the leasing office about what it would take to remove someone from a lease agreement. All hypothetical, of course. And every call ended the same way. "Do you want us to notify your spouse?" "No," I'd reply. "Not yet." The final step was emotional insulation. That was the hardest, because part of me, even now, still looked at her and saw the version I fell in love with. The girl who stayed up with me through the night when my dad was in the ICU. The woman who danced barefoot in the kitchen to old jazz records on Sunday mornings. The best friend who made up voices for dogs at the park and believed in my startup when I didn't. That version of her was gone, replaced by someone who smiled with practiced charm. Someone who lied without blinking. Someone who could sit across from me at dinner and text another man between bites. I had to let go of the ghost, because the woman I loved, she didn't exist anymore. Only the version she wanted me to see. And now that the blindfold was off, I wasn't going to waste another second pretending. I thought I'd uncovered everything there was to uncover. I thought the affair existed in this sealed emotional vault, separate from our careers, from the rest of the world. But like everything else about Lauren's deception, I was wrong. It started with a receipt, not a romantic one, not a dinner for 2 or a hotel booking. This one was a rideshare log buried inside our shared tax folder of all places. I was going over our documents late one night, double-checking which expenses had been filed under business-related, in case I needed to dispute anything in court. That's when I noticed it. Multiple trips tagged work-related, that began at Tyler's apartment and ended at boutique hotels miles away from either of their offices. That didn't make sense. They didn't live near each other. Their office was in Midtown, and Tyler's apartment was in the North Quarter. So why were they starting work trips from his address? Why were they expensing private rides from one residential location to another? I clicked deeper. One of the receipts included a timestamp for 6:42 a.m., a Monday morning. The drop-off was at a hotel in Denver. The fare was expensed through Lauren's company card, logged as client onboarding breakfast meet. I remembered that week. She told me she was in Boston. At first, I thought maybe she just lied to me. But the more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just personal deception. This was professional misconduct. And it wasn't just Lauren. Tyler's name started showing up on internal memos I wasn't supposed to see. I had access to certain back-end files from a side project I'd done with Lauren's firm years earlier. I was technically still on the vendor list for a digital rollout campaign. It had been dormant for years, but the shared folder remained accessible. And there it was. Expense reports, meeting logs, travel authorizations, dozens of documents with their names on them, side by side, trip after trip, often to cities that never had active clients at the time. The reports used vague descriptors like team synergy and market alignment initiative, but the dates? They matched perfectly with the photos I'd recovered from Lauren's second phone. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was cheating the company. And Tyler was right there with her. That discovery changed something in me. Until that point, I'd focused on the personal fallout, the betrayal, the divorce. But now I was holding evidence that their affair wasn't just unethical, it was fraudulent. They had used company funds to subsidize a relationship. Hotels billed under overnight R&D sessions. Flights booked for stakeholder alignment meetings. Dinners labeled client acquisition dinners, all with no actual client names attached. In some cases, they double-dipped. Tyler would expense the flight through his department, and Lauren would submit the same receipt under a different justification. They were laundering their affair through a corporate filter, hiding behind jargon and the assumption that no one looked too closely at receipts. But someone was looking now. Me. And I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a witness. I documented everything, created a separate timeline, purely professional, separate from the divorce file. This one focused on violations, misuse of funds, falsified reports, manipulated itineraries. I collected *TS, company memos, forwarded confirmation emails. I used LinkedIn to find internal colleagues who were likely to have visibility into their chain of command. And then I made the next move, an anonymous submission. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. Lauren and Tyler had built their relationship on a foundation of deception. Not just to me, but to their employer, to the teams that trusted them, to the budget they were misusing to fund their fantasy. I didn't have to say much. Just attached the timeline with a note. Significant discrepancies in corporate travel and expense reporting involving senior strategy personnel. Repeated personal use of company funds for non-work-related travel. Dates, receipts, and routes included. Recommend compliance review. Anonymous for now. I routed it through a burner email. No identifying metadata. The company had an internal reporting system, anonymized, supposedly confidential. I didn't trust it, but the timing couldn't have been better. Their quarterly audit cycle was about to start, and nothing gets attention in a corporation like the phrase misuse of company funds. 3 days later, the first ripple hit. Lauren came home unusually quiet. Said her team had a surprise audit. Something about travel logs? She muttered, distracted. Some upper-level review, they're doing it across departments. I asked how her week was going. She shrugged. Weird. Stressful. Tyler's been acting off. I smiled gently and said, sounds like work's catching up. She nodded, then went to pour herself a drink. That night, she didn't touch her phone. A week later, I checked Tyler's LinkedIn. His job title had changed from senior brand director to simply freelance consultant. That's when I knew. He was out, quietly, without drama, probably under the table. A resignation that smelled a lot like a forced exit. No farewell post. No team photos. Just gone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was something closer to relief. Because now it wasn't just my word against theirs. Now there was a paper trail. Lauren didn't mention Tyler's disappearance until 2 days later. We were eating breakfast in near silence. She looked tired. Not in the hungover way she usually did after work trips. This was different. There was something brittle in her voice when she said, "Tyler's leaving the company." I looked up from my toast. "Oh." He said it was personal stuff. Family issues. Needed a change of pace. I nodded slowly. Makes sense. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. We both knew she was lying. But now she was lying to protect someone who wasn't protecting her anymore. That's when it started happening. The erosion. Lauren began to unravel, not all at once, but in subtle, visible ways. Her energy shifted. She was less chipper in the mornings. She forgot details. She started bringing her phone into the shower again. Only this time, she left it on the floor instead of hiding it. She wasn't careful anymore. Because the thing they'd built, the thing she'd risked our marriage and her career for, was collapsing from both ends. He was gone. And she was next. What she didn't know was that I already had a sealed envelope in my lawyer's possession. Full evidence of the affair. The financial misconduct. The misuse of marital funds. But now, with Tyler's professional connection confirmed, we added a new angle. Conflict of interest. Tyler had been her supervisor on multiple projects. That alone was enough to raise flags internally, even without the affair. They'd booked shared travel for campaign development, expensed shared rides, signed off on each other's approvals. From a legal standpoint, it was a mess. From a marital standpoint, it was just insult on top of injury. My lawyer called it ethical overlap. Said it could bolster our case in mediation. Show that Lauren had blurred lines not just emotionally, but financially and professionally. That she had betrayed more than just vows. She'd betrayed contracts. I sat with that for a while, because in some twisted way it validated everything I felt. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't overreacted. I wasn't the insecure husband projecting jealousy onto harmless coworkers. I was right, and now I had evidence to back it up. But still, I waited. I didn't confront her, didn't show her the files, didn't ask her why Tyler left. I just let the silence do its work. And it did. Lauren got quieter, jitterier. She picked at her food.